If you enjoy listening to adventure stories, then you should visit thedihedral.com. You will find stories from other members of the community and read about climbing, life, and the outdoors. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Let's connect and climb on!
Climb on! Roll! All right, welcome to the show, everyone. I'm Carrot here with Gaia. Thank you for joining us. Today we welcome a guest who has found a way to motivate nearly everyone who has heard her speak or heard her name. Her accomplishments are far too great to sum up in an introductory welcome statement, but I'd like to share at least a few highlights. Anoushé Husain is featured in the recently released #1 best-selling book, Tough Women Adventure Stories. She has a master's in European governance from the University of Luxembourg. Anoushé has made a career of civil service, including time spent as a policy advisor for the Department of Energy and Climate Change, as well as the Diversity and Inclusion Manager for the Department of Education. Anoushé speaks 6 languages, has several publications, seems to be involved in endless speaking engagements, including 3 just today, and has been receiving commendations and awards for at least the last 10 years. This seems like a full schedule, but Anoushé also co-founded Paraclimbing London. She serves as an ambassador for the Ehlers Danlos Support UK and Limb Power, as well as supporting the Grit and Rock Foundation. And if that isn't enough, Anoushé is a rock climber who has recently ranked both 2nd and 3rd nationally in her category for UK paraclimbers. Anoushé Husain, thank you so much for taking some time to join us on a chat today.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, Anoushé, when we start, we want to just go over some of your life experiences, and you have been overcoming obstacles that just didn't start with figuring out the crocs in a climbing move. Your journey to climbing is filled with overcoming different challenges from the very beginning. And of course, you've shared this story multiple times, but we were wondering if you felt comfortable enough to retell with us some of the challenges that you have had to overcome and how you inevitably ended as a rock climber.
Basically I was born missing my right arm below the elbow. So while I was always told from a society's perspective that I had a disability, because I was born with it, I never knew any different. So I never saw it as a disability. I just saw it as being a bit different and doing things a bit differently. Aside from tying shoelaces, still not mastering that. Pretty much was a little bit poorly as a child, but nothing serious, and ended up doing sort of competitive swimming as a kid and then competitive martial arts as a teenager. I tried climbing on a school trip when I was like 8 or 9. It was one of these things where we went on a school trip to France, and having grown in Luxembourg, France was like next door. So really easy to do school trips on the continent. And I saw this thing with colors on it. I sort of looked at all my friends going up it as if it was not a challenge, was really intimidated because I didn't really like heights, and tried it out, got up halfway and was, fine with it. My teacher, who I'm still in contact with actually, she sort of, when I came down, she was crying. So I don't think she expected me to get to where I got to. We went back to that place a year later, and I was determined to actually make it to the top like my friends had. I didn't think of climbing at that point as something that was for me. I just thought it was a fun thing to do, but it was, it's nothing special. It didn't have anywhere a place near swimming or karate in my eyes. Got up to the top of the wall, and actually I really enjoyed that feeling of topping something out. Surprisingly, I think that's kind of something that might get people addicted on a wall. I came home, told my parents I really liked topping out, said I really wanted to try climbing. They went, nope, dangerous sport. I'm Southeast Asian, I come from a Pakistani background, and while my parents are very, very cool at letting me do loads of things, they all still are from a Southeast Asian background, and I am their only daughter. So of course, dangerous sports, no. Like most parents, frankly. And that was that. My parents kept trying to persuade me to come out and climb with them. One of my best friends, we both went on the same school trip together. She ended up climbing as a hobby afterwards. I didn't. So we both took different paths in that sense. And we're still really good friends. And, fast forward a few years, I hit around the age of 16. I'm competing nationally in karate, enjoying myself. But my joints are starting to do some really, really funny things. My right shoulder's popping out of place when I sleep. It's popping out of place when I sneeze. There's no pain, it just is popping out now. You know, I thought it was kind of a cool trick. Parents disagreed. Doctors definitely disagreed. Turns out I was, inverted commas, hypermobile, whatever that means, because we found it was happening in my other joints just to less of an extent. And we didn't know what was happening, but basically, because I need to go for thumb surgery, we were seeing that it was sort of having quite an impact. And because my style of martial arts was mainly artistic rather than competitive, I was fighting the air, and so there was nothing to stop my joints from sort of realizing there was something not to go out. So I got told to stop karate cold turkey. So basically went to the surgery guy that morning, and that afternoon I couldn't go to my karate session. At that time I was doing karate 16 hours a week. I'd gotten my first podium the week before nationally, and had been accepted onto the national team as a para martial artist. So it was kind of a bad week. In terms of me, karate was my outlet to school. It was my outlet to my family. It was my place I escaped. I didn't realize at the time, but you know, climbing today is still that, except it's my escape from my life. So I lost that. It wasn't so much that I lost a sport, it was I lost a purpose for me. I spent the next 2 years trying lots of different sports and feeling quite despondent and why me about it, because I was really sad. And then it wasn't just that, but my body just started crumbling apart. We didn't really realize that actually the amount of sport I was doing was helping my muscles stay strong, and therefore the hypermobility, which became Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, just not diagnosed at the time. The condition means that my connective tissue is stretchy and loose, and so my joints can pop out of place because there's just essentially your ligaments and tendons aren't holding them in place in the same way as a normal person. And so your muscles act as like a scaffolding, almost like around a building. So they do that for my joints. And obviously I dropped 16 hours of martial arts a week plus other training. My muscles got weaker. I started popping things out way more. We hadn't made the link, but I have now, thankfully. Anyway, come 18, I had my first surgery on my thumb. Come 20, I had my second surgery on my thumb. 21, I was walking in the Pyrenees, and for my Duke of Edinburgh award, it's an awards scheme that's around the world actually, just maybe by different names, to encourage young people to get into volunteering and a hobby and a sport. And so I was doing it as part of my school program, and I wanted to finish my gold, which is like the final level you can get, and you needed to do like 50 kilometers hiking in the mountains. So we went to the Pyrenees in the south of France, and after doing like the walk, and it wasn't an issue because I wasn't allowed to carry like a backpack anymore and stuff, got down to base camp, and I opened a car door to get something, and just opening the car door I wrenched my back. Little did I know I'd probably popped like a disc slightly. I came back home, and from the next week I was sort of limping. I had really bad sciatica. Next year would actually finally got me, because I was too young to be sick, right? So people are just like, it's in my head, you know, it'll get better, I'm young, whatever. They finally scanned me a few months later and found out that I had 2 discs that weren't necessarily sitting in the right place, and had surgery for that, 22. Wasn't healing right from the surgery, so they scanned me again, found a tumor, and had cancer at 23/24. Basically, I had the surgery before my birthday, but I got diagnosed officially after my birthday. So I don't know whether I was 23 or 24 when I officially had cancer. It's really one of those weird things. So I kind of go both. As you can imagine, like with the back surgery, I was struggling to walk. Then with the cancer, the chemo, radiotherapy, I wasn't just like physically broken. I was frankly mentally broken as well. I remember when the doctor told me that I had cancer, he used the words, "You have anomalous cells." And I went, anomalous, that means abnormal. Oh, you mean I have cancer? He's like, yeah, you have anomalous cells. I was like, I'm not gonna believe you till they actually use the C word. Just use the C word. So he's like, yeah, you have cancer. I'm like, okay. And I remember in my head, like, so much had happened, like in terms of health stuff, in terms of not being able to live the life I wanted to live, because of my health stuff, that I was very much so sort of going, why me? And also like I don't think I can cope anymore. I think I've hit rock bottom. I remember in the doctor's appointment, literally in my head going, I don't think I could do any more of this. The thing is, with cancer treatment, you kind of get put into survival mode. You get so many doctors coming at you with so many files of appointments. Your life kind of doesn't become your own for a little while you're in like the midst of active treatment, that you don't really have time to wallow, really. You've just got to get on with it because it's quite quick. You've got to make decisions about surgeries, you've got to make decisions about treatment, you've got to work out what you're going to eat when you're not feeling well, all of that type of thing. So and I was in the middle of my master's as well, so I was really determined not to lose time on my master's, so I deferred all my exams and my essays, but finished them all in my second year, 3 months after I finished treatment. It was a bit insane.
Oh, wow.
Never doing that again like that. Ever. And yeah, so like my friend, like I got sort of you know, after cancer treatment, I got put into like a hospital supervised gym program just to, because my heart rate was going insane with the chemo treatment, and I was really still struggling to walk much more than a few minutes without sort of being either in pain from my back or sort of out of breath from the chemo. And one of the things we didn't realize what was going to happen was my left arm, which is my sort of normal inverted commas arm, I started struggling with it. So things like washing my hair, getting my socks on, hair drying, like anything which required effort. And I was like, wait a minute, that's my independence. That's actually my independence. And my friend who was climbing, after we both went on that field trip, at that point 16 years before, said, well, why don't you come climbing with me, because you've been trying to find a new sport for ages, nothing is holding your attention because it's not mentally stimulating. Because karate was mentally stimulating. You had to you had to know where your toe was going to exactly be if you wanted to land a jump. So there was a lot of that type of thing, which meant I was mentally stimulated. You need to be very present with your body. And she said, come climb. And I said, you're insane. Like, why climb now? Like, you know, arm not working, body not working, kind of broken. And she was like, yeah, but you never know, it might work out. And I was like, well, I'm gonna, you know, I don't even know if I can like do my harness because I can't grip it that much. And she was like, well, I'll do that for you. And I was like, well, I don't know if I can belay because I didn't know how to belay to start with, but also like I don't think I have the strength or power to belay. And she's like, well, that's fine, you don't need to, we'll go in a 3. I was like, I don't even know if I can do my knot. And she's like, I'll do your knot. I was like, okay, like, but I'm gonna fall. And she's like, everybody falls in climbing, now you're just making excuses. You're just scared.
Like,
I was like,
definitely scared.
That's a fair shout. She said, look, but worst case, you don't like it, and at least you can knock another sport off your list of God knows how many things you've tried in the last few years since you had to stop karate. But best thing is you find something that will change the rest of your life. I said, okay, I can't argue against that, really. So we went, and I was in a lot of pain. Like, it was really bad. I didn't make it up the top of anything. Like, don't get me wrong, a 3 plus a 3 wasn't making it up, but there was a route on a slab which was really like just it. I think that the fact that I had to think about how I was going to get my left arm to my right side to get the hold, as friendly and as juggy as that hold was, it was still really hard. And just having to learn how to balance myself like that on my tiptoes, which I really hadn't really done any sort of real movement like that in years, that sort of focus, I kind of forgot I was ill. It was only for a few seconds, but it was a few seconds where I felt normal, my normal, whatever my normal is. And it was that feeling that motivated me to get into the gym, to start doing some cardio and to do the boring cardio, which I hate, but it meant I could get more climbing in. And so, yeah, I used to go with my friend every couple of months, for a couple of hours. It was never anything serious. I was frankly too busy with my master's and then starting to work and stuff, because I really, if you've seen my timetable, I don't exactly give myself free time very easily. I have to schedule it in. So that's always been my trait. And then I moved to London. And 2013, and when I moved to London, I didn't know anybody to climb with. I didn't know the climbing walls, so I stopped. The only time I'd go and climb was when I went home to see my parents every couple of months. And again, it was just this, thing I do because it's fun. And then about 5 years ago, about this time 5 years ago, I moved in with with a flatmate to a flat, and I wanted to climb. I'd done a taster course, so at least I knew how to do my figure of eight. I knew how to belay, so I was really proud of myself. I didn't own any kit, nothing like that. It was just at least because I was really missing climbing. So I figured at least if I knew how to do my figure of eight and I knew how to belay, I'd be able to go climbing if I decided to with somebody. At least I wouldn't be dependent in that way. Wouldn't need to find a third person. And then my flatmate at the time, she didn't know how to belay and didn't know her figure of eight. And I said, well, I can teach you those. Why don't we go climbing? And she said, well, that'd be a great social outing for us because it's a way for us to get to know each other. We can be bad together. I went, brilliant. So we went and we were horrible. And it was brilliant. It was lovely. It was such a relaxed way of getting to know each other, but also learning to trust each other as well. And, again, it was, 3 pluses. I was struggling to walk from the nearest, train station to the climbing wall. It's only a 9-minute walk, but I would have to take the bus because it was too tiring. Still that unfit 5 years ago. And around that time, I'd heard there were national competitions in the UK for people who have disabilities. And I got asked if I wanted to join that year. And I went, I've only been climbing like a couple of weeks in London, not a chance. Not a chance am I going to a competition without training. And then I'm like, oh God, am I going to train again? Oh, it's been like however many years since I last trained. Oh, well, I could see what my body will do. I don't know. Why don't I try what training will do to me? You never know. I really liked it last time. What happens? What happens? So yeah, I've got a coach. And a year later, I was ranking second in my category.
So awesome.
And it was just one of those things where it's just then spiraled. It's become my life. I met my husband on the wall in a competition 2 years ago. He proposed at a competition and we got married this year. So there we go. I mean, it's literally, climbing has become my life when I'm not in the office and I'm not a public speaker. Well, kind of talk about climbing a lot as a public speaker, but you know what I mean.
I was wondering if you could do your best to try to explain to people who might be listening who are not necessarily climbers some of maybe not the personal appeal that maybe we would have for climbing, but what's the general appeal about climbing? Like if somebody looks at us and it's just like, I don't know why you guys are doing that, what would you say to them to help them understand why we do what we do?
So I think climbing is probably one of the best sports for any ability range. I'm talking if you are super unfit, or you've gone through some medical stuff, which means you've lost your fitness, or you have mobility challenges or even learning difficulties, I think climbing is a really good sport. So I think in terms of being an all ability sport, I think climbing is one of those things that it's accessible for all. Because there's so many types of climbing that people can do, you can assist people on the wall and it means they have just as good an experience as somebody who's not assisted. So I think from that perspective, climbing is great. Climbing is also good because you can choose to do it solo, but you can also do it with friends, which means if you don't know anybody, you can still go and enjoy the sport out, or if you fancy doing some stuff on your own because you want some me time, but you can also go and meet people. And there's a community in climbing which is really welcoming. So even if you don't know anybody and you go to the wall and you just want to go find, you just get to meet people. I've met so many of my friends. I mean, I didn't know people in London when I moved here, and I have so many friends now who I've gotten to know them through the climbing wall. And through lockdown, I barely know them, but they've come up and dropped stuff at my flat so I didn't have to go out and things like that. I mean, you meet really nice people at the wall, so there's that. There are a lot of people from a lot of communities at the wall. So say, I don't know, it's really LGBT plus friendly, for instance. Not necessarily so many sort of people from a Black or Asian ethnic minority background, depending on where you are, but still quite a few. So yeah, it's a good place to get to know people from, if you're not from those communities, But yeah, and it's also it's one of those things. It doesn't matter how you feel when you go to the wall, whether you feel like doing something super challenging or super easy, whether you're tired or stressed, whether you've had a really bad day and you're not feeling great, there's always going to be something you can climb. There's always going to be something available. And if you can't climb a whole thing because you don't fancy it, nobody cares. You set your own limits. And I think that's the bit I love the most, is I go in and I never feel judged by what I climb.
That's a great point of when you state you put your own limits, because sometimes, or at least this comes from my point of view, I can spend time without climbing, and then I will go back, and I feel a little bit intimidated when I see these people. I always describe them as demigods because they're so strong, beautifully fit, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll do my best. There's some sense of sometimes in my self-consciousness because I'm not performing to the same level that I know that I could have if I hadn't stopped training, or I don't know, maybe it's the social pressure that sometimes you get too much in your head.
I think that's a normal pressure, and I've definitely felt it. So this year in April, I dislocated my right knee. I'm currently a wheelchair user, so I'm not really walking at all, which means my level of fitness has dropped. I was working towards a really cool project before April, which I can't talk about properly, but I put it this way, I was a bit of a machine on the wall. I wasn't super fit. I'm not like super muscly or stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, but I was quite fit for relative to where I normally am, because I've been working really hard towards like getting that goal done. And then now, like when I got back to the wall, it was what I would call pretty horrific. Like I had to have a nap between two super easy climbs in the wheelchair because I couldn't physically stay awake the first time I went back. And I wasn't belaying for about 3-4 weeks. It took me 3-4 weeks before I felt strong enough to both climb and belay. And it's taken, we've been back on the wall maybe 2.5 months now. It's taken 2.5 months where now I can belay and climb, and I'm starting to climb a bit harder. And I'm starting to climb with less assistance from my belayer. So my belayer has been pulling my ropes, and my right knee doesn't take so much. And yeah, it's been quite hard because I know what I could climb. I know I've competed, and I know I can be a pretty badass climber from time to time. But I also know my body's been through a ton. As a society, we've all been through a lot in the last few months. And that's going to take its toll. So, if you take a break from the climbing wall, take your time. If you've taken a break from sports generally, you try climbing as your first sport after, not having done much activity. Just be gentle with yourself. Again, you're going to see demigods who are super ripped on the wall, who take their t-shirts off in the summer, and it's going to be intimidating, and it's going to make you think, oh my God, what do they don't eat, right? You know what? At the end of the day, it's everywhere, and that's, it's annoying. Even though I won't ever do it, I find it really annoying that guys can take their tops off and girls can't. So it's a thing. I just find it unfair. But it's just one of those things where I'm like, at the end of the day, you don't know what journey those people have gone through, and they don't know your journey, and your abilities and your efforts are relative to your life and your journey, and how much time you can put in and how much time you want to put in.
One of the things that just talking to and watching some of your talks, I think it's courageous, just your honesty with yourself and with other people, right? A lot of people have a very difficult time admitting their limitations and things like that, but it doesn't seem to be the case at all for you. And I'm sure it took some work for you to get there. But I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about where that strength and resiliency comes, kind of pushing you towards this level of being able to share your stories and do it in a way that's so inviting.
So I think cancer was probably it. It was probably the turning point for me. I went from a real why me, I can't do this anymore moment to I've got to get through it. I've got to survive this. And that kind of created a little bit of switch in terms of learning to do why me a little bit less, and wallowing a bit less. But then it took another few years. It was really when I moved to London, started climbing, and then honestly started therapy to work on myself, because I realized I really wasn't in the best mental state to deal with the obstacles that I was experiencing in my life and the challenges. And frankly, I think it was basically admitting that I had a problem, admitting and accepting that I did need help, and admitting and accepting I wasn't going to manage this on my own. That for me was probably the second big step. And it took a while to, I think when I moved to London and I started working and then eventually climbing, I kind of felt like I lost a little bit of the purpose of my life. I didn't know. I had so many things pulling me in different directions. I had to change what I thought I was going to be doing in my life in terms of my career, a little bit. And so, and I had these health things, I was getting diagnosed with these things left, right, and center as well. So it was kind of hard to sort of, deal with all that. So yeah, I think when I finally admitted I needed some help, and it was through getting that help that I sort of realized I needed to own my story and own what I had and accept that, yeah, I'd been through some fairly challenging things. And that's not to say others haven't been through more challenging things than me at all. I'm not putting, saying at all that. But, I think when I went through cancer, because I was so nervous about the questions I'd get from society and, oh God, she's had another thing happen to her and all the rest of it, that I didn't really share my story with anybody bar very close friends and very close family. So I essentially went through my cancer story in quite a lot of isolation. And 5 years later, when it came to sort of 5 years, no evidence of disease, I sort of realized there was something in me that said I needed to start sharing it. But not just to share it for me, but to share it to create change. I'd become part of a cancer organization here called Shine Cancer Support. And it's an organization for people in the 20s, 30s, and 40s who've had a diagnosis, regardless of where you are in your cancer journey. So no evidence of disease or stage 4, whatever is going on, it's open for you to be there. And it was shocking to see how many other people had kept their story secret, because they felt they couldn't talk about having cancer while they're younger, having cancer while they're a young adult, while their lives are quite unstable. You might be in the middle of your studies, you might be in the middle of trying to find your first job, you don't have a mortgage yet. I mean, it causes a lot of complications in terms of your life journey when you have cancer quite early on. And I kind of felt I wanted to share my story to help end that isolation, to help others realize they could talk about it and take that seriously big leap of faith, because it was so scary sharing it that first time, and worrying about the reaction from the people who I hadn't told when I was living back in Luxembourg. How was it going to be for my parents? How was it going to be for all of that? And I was just like, you know what? Screw it, I'm going to do it. And I did it on live radio, funnily enough. That was the first time I came out about it. Yeah, my dad was listening and he just went, wow, you went for it. I went, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it properly. And it was one of those things where I just went, it's time. I'm okay with my story now. I'm okay with it enough that I'm happy to share. Now, when you see me sharing things online, it's only once I've processed it enough that I'm able to cope with reactions, comments, positive, negative, constructive, that might be happening. So sometimes I go silent on social media, and that might be because I'm doing some fairly heavy processing internally. And then I'll come out with like a post or two later on that might or might not be fairly heavy based on whatever has been happening. But that will only be once I've realized I'm resilient enough to go for it. And I think that's been it. It was kind of when people started coming to me saying, it's by you sharing your journey, I feel like I'm less alone. By you sharing your journey, I feel like I can finally talk about it with my friends and family. I can finally get help. I can finally start trying new things. I can give myself permission to live a new life. I can give my permission to accept what's happened to me. I can talk to the doctor about my symptoms because you've shared stuff that actually makes so much more sense to me. I didn't realize I might also have XYZ condition. Or I didn't realize this was abnormal to feel this. And I think it was that's kept me going in terms of sharing my journey. It's when others have it's made a huge difference to their lives. So that's climbing a little bit differently or harder on the wall to getting a diagnosis for something that was causing them pain. For me, regardless, that means a lot.
Oof.
Sorry.
No, you're so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
No worries. Sorry, that was kind of it. I was like, ooh.
But
was
it
great.
is, it is what it is. And when you feel, when things are so vivid and they're just so present, you need to embrace them. And it all depends on how you process it, and you've, because of your experience and how much you've been willing to give yourself as well, you've been able to attain a level of beauty that goes beyond the social concept or perception of what beauty is. Just listening to you talk is just so beautiful and so inspiring. I
Thank
was
you.
just like, she's so beautiful. You're amazing.
Thank you. I think one other thing I will say in terms of processing and why I'm able to share is I do really accept that things are really bad sometimes. I do have days where I go, this really sucks. And I do have days, I call her dark and twisty. She's a friend of mine. She's my dark side. She's the side that goes against all the positive and hope that I generally share outside. I used to hate her. And now I've accepted her as part of myself. And when I'm in dark and twisty mode, the world is awful and I have no solutions to the problems I'm experiencing and I don't know how to cope. And I literally go into a meltdown, whether it's sitting with a duvet and just having ice cream or chocolate or just sitting there and crying. I do sit with it now. I hate it. I was so scared of doing that previously, but now by doing that, I'm able to almost let go of those emotions and recognize that yes, the situation is really tough. Okay, now that I recognize that, what do I do? What do I do next? And I think that process of effectively grieving, it's really hard to do it. Like, as in, if you've never done it before, it's quite hard not to be scared of it. But actually, it is so therapeutic.
Yeah, and I think it's also part of, like you said, well, if you have not gone through it necessarily of embracing those negative feelings, but when you get to that point, it helps you to recognize what your emotions are and to release as
Yeah.
well.
And it helps you recognize what you're scared of, if you are scared of anything, and therefore what you can do about it potentially.
Correct. And well, I brought up the word beautiful, and that takes me to, there's a video of you online titled "If I Can," which is beautifully
Yes.
produced,
So
beautifully
good.
written. Yeah, the shots are just so beautiful. And in that video, you present how your relationship is with outdoor climbing, and you also highlight two good friends that have supported you in the process.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what role has a climbing community had in your life? What does it feel to be part of that community?
I mean, the climbing community has literally, no worries. I mean, the climbing community has literally changed my life. I, you know, I don't know if I even have words to say how much it's changed my life. I have friends and people I don't even know. I mean, I guess I'll have to compare it to pre-Instagram and post-Instagram, let's call it, because I think it's very different now. To a certain extent, it's very different, but pre-Instagram or pre-life becoming a bit insane and award-winning and all the rest of it. So me becoming internet famous, for all intents and purposes. Not that I'm famous, but do you know what I mean? Like internet known. I just, post on these like Facebook groups saying I need climbing partners. I wanted to train, and that was my main thing. I just wanted to get to know people, but I wanted to train, and I needed people I could climb with on a regular basis. And that's how I got to meet the two friends, Anna and Gemma, who Anna has co-founded Paraclimbing London with me. And that's how we got to know each other. But it was this incessant, I think, for the most part, I think the beauty about the climbing community, or the friends I have met within it now, they might have found the things I was trying to do pretty awesome, but they never let on that it was pretty awesome, and I love that, because it meant that I didn't feel special or different or disabled in any way. It just meant I was a climber. It meant I could leave all of my other labels behind me for a bit, for an hour or two a week or more, whenever I climbed more than and just develop a friendship based on climbing. So for me, that's what the climbing community has given to me. It's given me a time to be me, the me I choose to be when I'm not office me and public speaker me and the other me's that I need to be during my life. I have an amazing coach who we've been training for 5 years, and regardless of what's going in my life, I've always known I could go to my session and climb, and potentially have a half-assed therapy session while I'm at it, because you talk when you climb because you're so busy physically getting moving that actually the mouth just rolls at that point,
true.
and you get it all out of your system as well, and suddenly you're climbing better. Because I find when I'm climbing in particular, like, your emotions come out on the wall. So if you're nervous, your feet will double tap on the holds, or you'll hesitate with your hands. If you're angry, you're going to be more aggressive on the wall. If you're sad, it's also going to show on the wall. It's all going to show. If you're distracted, if you're stressed, it's all going to show. I find the climbing wall a perfect mirror to your life. So whenever I'm watching people climb, I'm always sort of, especially people I know, like, I'm always analyzing whether their climbing moves have changed slightly, because then you'll almost always know there's something going on, and then I'll go, you okay? And that, I think, is what I love. It's the climbing community can judge that and help you, and chat, and everybody just goes, it sucks, and empathize with you if there's something going on.
I love that analogy of the climbing wall being a mirror. It's so true. Like, yeah,
It's so
it's
true.
great. I kind of want to push this conversation about the climbing community into a very specific direction. You climb at one of our favorite gyms in the entire world, which is actually how I became familiar with you, the Castle Climbing Center in London. And they just do so many great things that I don't think most gyms have even come close to catching up with them. And so I'm wondering if you could do maybe us a favor, and also Castle Climbing Center a favor, and just for a moment serve as an ambassador to Castle Climbing Center. And
They're sponsored athletes, so I'm happy to be an ambassador to them anyway.
So if you could just maybe take a little time to explain to our listeners just what it is that makes Castle Climbing Center so unique and special.
Well, the Castle Climbing Center, start with the building itself, is special and unique. It's actually it was an old Victorian water pump. So back in the Victorian age, because water pumps looked really ugly, they didn't like water pumps looking really ugly. So they actually created castle towers around it to make it look less ugly. That was basically what it was. And when the castle became the castle, when they bought the building, in the UK, buildings can be listed and they need to be preserved in certain ways. So because of that, they've had to keep loads of elements of the building on the inside as well as the outside, in terms of it still being Victorian style. They've had to reuse bits. So you still see, when you're inside, you see lots of like the old bits of the Victorian water pump being used as features in the castle, decorative or otherwise. So I think that's, as it is, they've managed to keep the heritage of that building, but also you're climbing in a castle. I mean, how damn cool is that?
So cool.
Right? So that's, that's to start with, that's the first amazing thing. Second, the staff are absolutely brilliant. So when I wanted to start climbing in the UK and was really nervous, because when I did my taster course, while it was nice, it wasn't at the castle, while it was nice, I'd had quite a lot of people going, how are you going to be like 1.5 hands? And they were being they made me feel quite insecure about my ability to belay. And because of that, I was quite nervous about starting at another wall properly. So I called up the castle about a couple of months before we actually started, my flatmate and I, and I said, look, this is the thing. And they were just like, dude, just come, just turn up, you're fine. And I just felt like they treated the fact that I had 1.5 arms so normally that I was like, dude, you know what, this is the place. I came in. When I signed up for my first coach, and my coach essentially, it's also just, I didn't realize how much the staff spend their time making the place as inclusive as possible. So they really listen to the feedback. They're so friendly. It only took maybe a month or so of me climbing there on a regular basis for them to know my name. And it's not just me, they'll do that for everybody, right? But I felt really welcome because I waved to people, and it's just, even if you've gone and you don't know anybody, waving to people, it just makes you feel like you're part of a community, even if you don't know their names. It's just friendly. Their staff are always on hand for guidance and help. So when I had to do my first ground anchor, didn't know how to do that, or didn't remember from my taster course. Yeah, just ask somebody. So in that sense, it's really nice. They notice when you're away. So when I'm not around, they actually haven't seen you in a couple of weeks. How are you doing? They actually notice when I go on holiday, which is really sweet. And I think that's really nice. But also they have a really big community spirit. So they have a community garden. A lot of their stuff in the cafe is grown from that garden. Their teas, they're, where possible, I think they're, if not fully vegan, definitely vegetarian. They've always got stuff for different dietary requirements. So gluten-free. I'm gluten-free and dairy-free. And I can almost always find something there in the cafe. But also the whole community element of it. They run a lot of community stuff for kids from poor socioeconomic backgrounds. They really try and diversify their climbing as much as possible. They're really open to feedback. So, for instance, I talk to them a lot about whatever might be changing in the diversity and inclusion world, so that they can know, and then they can be on the front about that type of stuff too. And, you know, they've been so darn supportive of Paraclimbing London, it's not even funny. They've given us space, they've given us instructors when we've run short of people. They've let us reserve routes for people. They've helped us out immensely. They've even given us a spare room so we can use it as a sensory room for any of our people who might have sensory issues. I mean, it's just, I've been offered a key, not really, but I've been offered a tent
awesome.
as well. Because at one point I was spending so much time there, and I will be back to that stage once I'm back to full training again. That, you know, I used to train at my coach, have an hour break, train at my gym instructor, have an hour break, and then stay there till 10 p.m. So it'd be like an 8-hour day. And if I was filming there in the morning for some odd reason, then it'd be like a 12-hour day at the climbing center. So I'd just take breakfast, lunch, and dinner and just stay there. And it feels so comfortable. I don't really feel like coming home sometimes because it's so nice to be there. And it's also the excitement from the other climbers. You can just watch them. You can sit, there's so many places in the castle, pre-COVID, obviously. Right now everything's a bit different, but pre-COVID the cafe was right opposite the lead wall. So you could just sit there and watch the climbers climb hard or climb easy, and just sit and watch it all and enjoy that, and take those vibes from them, and then go back to your own climbing session later and just use that energy yourself to climb and get excited again. So yeah, the castle's flipping awesome.
Yeah, I'm sold
and
for sure.
I don't hesitate saying it is my home away from home, because I always feel, I have actually tried to use my front door key in the castle once. It is, for me, literally home away from home. I feel, when I walk in, I feel like part of me relaxes in a way that it doesn't in any other place.
That sounds so amazing. We have to go.
We have to.
I mean, it's our favorite place in the world,
yeah.
because
let me know when you turn up.
Oh my God, yes.
Sure.
It's funny because Carrot says it's our favorite gym in the world, and we have never been there. So imagine the level of how amazing it is that even just looking it online and hearing stories of the place, you're like, oh my God, I want to be there. It's already my number one.
Yeah.
Because they want to really diversify their feed even more, today they started their first diversify. They're going to do like one monthly takeover of a diverse person, whoever they choose. And well, they've chosen me as their first one, but so I'm doing their takeover today, basically. So it's kind of awesome as well.
In talking about that diversify, that takes us to our next question. If we're not mistaken, you have experience as a diversity and inclusion manager for the Department of Education, correct?
Yeah, I've actually just moved to another civil service department, but yes, I'm still in diversity.
And you mentioned diversity and how they're trying to be as inclusive as possible in Castle. Can you expand that as well as how would you offer tips to these people who want to engage in conversations with others outside of their social circle, I meant to say, their social circle, and don't know where to begin?
Yeah, God, it's a big one, isn't it? Especially in today's day after George Floyd and all the rest of it, there's been a lot going on. I would say to anybody who's trying to work out whether they do or don't need to like diversify their social circles, to first of all look at your social circle. Look at it, and look at it with really open eyes and go, okay, if my entire social circle is the same ethnic minority background as me, or it's the same ability range as me, or it's the same sexual orientation as me, or gender balance as me, then maybe you need to start thinking about diversifying that. Because if it's the same as you, you're gonna encounter or the same life journeys as you potentially. So you say all your friends are climbers, for instance, then you're potentially going to encounter what we call same group think. everybody's going to agree with you, or at least share your views, even political views, because they share your story. Essentially, what you want to be doing is you want to be finding people who don't share your story, whether that's because of the socioeconomic background they come from, whether that's because, and it's really looking at it. So for instance, I've noticed that a lot of my friends are climbers. They might not be climbers from the same ethnic minority as me, they might not be climbers from the same ability range as me, but a lot of my friends are climbers, which means we share at least that commonality. But it made me realize that actually I need to start diversifying my network, because actually I meet a lot of people who are super interested in diversity and inclusion, which is lovely, but actually I want to meet more people who aren't, and I want to understand them more, and I want to get to know them, so then I can start enriching my own life and my own experience as well. So that's one thing you do. How to do it is the other question. So one is, okay, I don't know how it will work in COVID, obviously, because you'll have to work with whatever restriction and that might be going on in your local area, depending on where you are in the world. But lots of places are really open and welcoming to new people. So if you, for instance, decide you want to get to know, I don't know, a load of Muslims, because not easy to maybe find one within your social circle, why don't you just go visit a mosque? Or, go work at a food bank for a bit. To get to know people from a completely different socioeconomic background and maybe different life journey, who might be needing a lot of emotional support right now if they're going to food banks. Why don't you go to a different climbing wall to the one you go to already, if you're already at a climbing wall, and get to know people there? Join a social climbing group you've never joined before. Most of them are on Instagram nowadays, for your probably local area as well. So just message them and say, can you join? Can you come in, join a Facebook group? There's so many ways. Join a meetup. I mean, there's so many ways to find places and people that you don't know. Now, if that is too intimidating, then why don't you pick up a new hobby? So try a class, a language class, a crafting class, whatever it is, that, a different sport. Just go do some taster things, because you'll find other people who are interested in trying those things too, who might not be coming from the same background journey as you. And try and go with, if it's too intimidating going on your own, go with a friend. But if it's not intimidating on your own, go on your own and try it out, and just be a bit brave. Diversifying your social circle means being brave, essentially, because it means getting to know things that you don't know. And the unknown is quite scary. It isn't actually scary. Meeting other people means you're just meeting other human beings, and generally everybody's really nice. But it does mean going out and experiencing something new, and that is always quite hard to do.
No, that's really just fantastic advice. Thank you. I was wondering if you could maybe build on that a little bit to talk about some of the obstacles that the climbing community needs to overcome to attain more diversity and inclusivity.
So climbing as a sport isn't the cheapest sport in the world, and I say that in terms of I know when I started, I found it a bit financially challenging, even though I have a full-time job. It was because the kit you need to get actually ends up being, even though you only buy it once and it lasts loads of years and actually works out not expensive, for a lot of people, putting out for a pair of shoes, a harness, and maybe a belay device can actually be quite challenging in one shot. And I would say that kind of might be putting people off the climbing. Because if you think about it, if you are hand to mouth, you're not going to pick climbing as a sport. You're going to pick football, or you're going to pick running, or you're going to pick something that doesn't really require much time or effort to get there, potentially, if it costs you to get there by car or by public transport. So that's something climbing as a whole needs to work on. It needs to work on finding ways to subsidize entry and access to people who want to take it up. And at Paraclimbing London, we're about to set up a social fund for that type of thing, because we're recognizing that a lot of people got hit during COVID, and they might not be able to afford to climb anymore. So we're helping them out soon, as soon as I set up the fund. But yes, it's coming, excitingly. But it's a real recognition that actually climbing isn't actually, it's not the most expensive sport out there, but it is a sport that does require a little bit of spending. So that's one. The other thing is, climbing, while it's diverse, I have definitely felt, especially when I started climbing 5 years ago, that I wasn't the only non-white person in my group. And then frequently I am the only non-white person in my group, let alone the only paraclimber in my first year of climbing. I didn't know anybody else who was a paraclimber at the time. And I think that is, again, that's getting better. There are so many more groups coming out, which is great. Paraclimbing groups are being set up, and I know in the US you've got Paradox Sports, so you guys have a great paraclimbing community compared to the UK. But I know just generally it's a bit harder to find paraclimbers, so heck, set up a Facebook group to do that, and then get them all to go climbing together. That's pretty easy as a fix. But then from an ethnic minority background, there are, depending on who it is. So again, you often people from an ethnic minority might be experiencing multiple barriers. So you're talking about social mobility, you're talking about disability, you might be talking about distance from the climbing wall as well, which might make it hard. People might have caring responsibilities as well. So you have to take into account, it's quite hard. And then you have cultural issues. So as a headscarf wearing climber, it was definitely hard to work out how to even tie my headscarf right, or work out something that was both comfortable and safe, so it wouldn't get tangled in a rope, for instance, but also wouldn't slip off mid-climb or something like that. So it took me about a good 6 months of the first time climbing in London to work out what type of scarf I would be comfortable with before I started doing like jumpy and dynamic moves. Because as you can imagine, jumpy and dynamic moves, you might not always have the best control when it comes to where the rope goes and where you go in relation to that, especially when you're learning. So yeah, there's a lot of barriers like that. And I would say outreach is probably the best thing for that. It's getting people to go out and say, I don't know, one of the things I'm talking about with some people is actually going to my local mosque and saying, look, we want to set up some taster sessions for you guys. What do you need for us to do that? What makes you feel comfortable? Literally bring it to the people you're looking to get into the wall. I mean, if you go and listen to them what they need, then do it. And if they stick with it, fine. If they don't, fine. At least you've tried. At the end of the day, that's what you need to do. So, thinking about ladies only sessions for maybe people wearing headscarves, so that they feel, or even if they're Muslim and not wearing headscarves, or just women wanting ladies only sessions for a little bit. You know what? It's totally fine if they want that. And if that's what's going to get them to the wall the first time, so it makes it a less intimidating experience for them, because, being brand new to something new is actually quite scary. I've been terrified of going to the gym. I tried swimming for my first time, and as a kid who used to competitively swim, I had a really bad experience post headscarf when I started wearing a headscarf, because I went to my local pool in Luxembourg, where I used to live, in a full suit, and actually it was a pretty racist experience. And despite the fact that I know how to swim comfortably and I'm fairly comfortable in a pool, and I used to know the pool a lot, I didn't go swimming again in a pool until 2 weeks ago. And it took somebody I know really well holding my hand to go into the pool, because I was so nervous about, not about getting into the water, God no, it was about how people would perceive me in a full suit. And can you imagine that that's me, who generally goes out of her comfort zone, and I'm quite comfortable doing that. It still took me 9 years after a racist experience to decide to try it again. Right, and that's because I need to swim, because I have no other cardio options because of my knee right now. So it was literally a need that made me go, fine, I've got to do it now. I've got to bite that bullet. A lot of people from different backgrounds that might feel othered do experience racism, ableism, and all sorts of other things. If they're experiencing that on a constant basis, why would they go out of their comfort zone to try something which they might think is maybe scary to go to? And I'm not saying climbing is an amazing community, but if they don't see people like them climbing, they might not feel like they're welcome. So we need to make it as welcoming as we can for them, so that they can feel that they can start, so that others who might want to join see people like them.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Very.
Thank you for that insight. It's very important to highlight those very important aspects, because sometimes we give them for granted. We're just too in our own situation that we forget that there are so many different factors that apply to so many different types of people.
Yeah, and those factors I've listed, there are so many more than that, but those are like the big main barriers that you might experience. There'll be others added to that.
So Anoushé, towards the end of our show, we always introduce a fun, lighthearted part where we ask several quick questions. So we're gonna start.
Oh, yay! Quick fire.
Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna start with the first one. What is your favorite restaurant in Luxembourg?
Oh, jeez.
Oh,
Oh, Lord. Crud, what's the name of it? Oh, darn it. Oh, my mum messaged me about it the other day because she went. Sorry. It's a sushi place. Yeah, so it's called. They've just changed names, but they're called JS Sushi and Restaurant. So they're like a all-you-can-eat buffet of like sushi and hot and cold, Chinese and Japanese style food. So yeah, we've been going there for years.
That sounds amazing. So follow that up with, who is your favorite professional rock climber?
Oh,
That's the best reaction.
It depends on the day. I have two, I think. I have two main ones. I probably have loads, but of the two I'll have to pick because I'm gonna pick two because I'm not gonna go with one. If I'm in for more lighthearted but still something to keep me motivated, it's Shauna Coxey, because she creates so much fun on her channels that it makes, when you need to train and in my case train, and sometimes I've lost a bit of motivation, just seeing how much fun she's having helps me realize how much fun the climb is, regardless of how tough a day I'm having. So she's one. Hazel Finley's probably my other one. And the reason for that is because she really walks out of her comfort zone in a way that I wish I could. And the other thing is we have a lot of conversations around diversity and inclusion, whether on the podcast I did with her a couple of months back or just generally. She'll pop me a message or I'll pop her one back. And so I really admire the amount of effort she's putting into diversifying herself and her channel.
Great choices. Yeah, they're amazing people.
What books should we all be reading?
I can give you that one. It's on my bookshelf. Right, so this is one I would say is really important. So, Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls.
Amazing.
I really love the title.
So the reason I did this is actually one of my best friends. So I have a group of friends from Luxembourg who are 6, and one of them is my climbing friend. And one of my best friends gave this to me, and she sent it to me and said, giving you this because one day we think you'll be in a book. And actually, funny enough, this summer, when I found out the book was going live and everything, I sent her a message going, so you know that book you gave me a couple of years ago? It happens. But the reason I love this book is girls are seriously underrepresented in children's books in terms of owning their stories and not being princesses in distress. And the thing about this, it's all about real women. So Serena Williams, Amelia Earhart, Hillary Clinton, all real women from all sorts of different backgrounds and ability ranges. Cleopatra's in there as well. And it's Good Night Stories, really digestible, which means girls can start learning how they don't have to be princesses in distress from when they're a really young age.
That sounds amazing. I think I'm going to order that book today. Sounds great. Yeah.
I think it's important. She was mentioning it, and growing up, my mom, it was not, of course, that book. It was so many years ago, but I had a similar book that I would go through, and I was like, oh my gosh, these are not princesses, or not the way that they present them. And for my mom, she was like, it's so important for you to know that women have a voice. And it was so powerful to me because back in the day, we didn't have this type of conversations. But now that you're saying we have a little son, I was like, I'm going to buy it for him. So he, as a male as well, he reads and sees, oh, women are portrayed in a different way 100%. As well to what they're used to.
Exactly. It's so important for everybody to read this. It's not just for girls. It's for little boys as well.
Totally. So,
and even adults, because I love the book.
Yeah, exactly. So, throughout the world, we're all in different stages of lockdown and things like that. And so I'm wondering if you have any shows that you might recommend people watch while they're trying to burn some time as we get through this.
So I'll tell you what we're watching right now, and that's Grey's Anatomy. We've restarted it. So my husband actually never seen Grey's, and I have rewatched it twice. So I'm on my third rerun from season 1 onwards. We've just hit season 6 there, and the other one's MasterChef. Australia, season 7.
Perfect. I'm going to jump right in.
MasterChef is so good.
So good.
We watch,
Yeah, MasterChef Australia, they're really kind though. It's really feel good. It's not like as I'm not a huge fan of MasterChef Canada, for instance, or things like that. But MasterChef Australia, they're really nice. So you come out feeling good after every episode.
That's like, oh, well, now you're saying that shows that make you feel good. It reminds me to Schitt's Creek. I don't know if you've watched or heard of Schitt's Creek.
I have, yeah, I've heard of it, not watched it.
It's such a wholesome show. You don't have anxiety ever. There's always a resolution at the end. They're always so nice. It's a good show. Now I'm putting my input. You should watch Schitt's Creek too.
Totally.
Okay, well, I think that's it. I mean, towards the end of the interview, we always allow our guests, as we mentioned, to plug something in, to add something if they would like to highlight a particular project or anything really.
See, that's really hard right now because I don't have any ongoing projects just now that I would love to highlight. Paraclimbing London isn't even running sessions right now because of safety reasons. But what I will say is I am planning a rather gigantic project come next year, depending. I have to go for surgery soon, so I'm just waiting on the timelines of all of that. And once I've recovered from that and I'm able to get back to climbing and stuff, I'm planning a rather hopefully awesome charity project where I'll be fundraising for a few charities. So I think follow me there and wait for it because it's exciting, actually.
Yeah, everyone start following that, Anoushé, so you can
Find
know
out
what's
about
going
it when it
on.
happens.
Yeah. Sometimes I glitch. My Spanish and my English tend to glitch sometimes. But yeah, follow Anoushé. That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for joining us. This was so fun.
Absolutely. Thank you.